I'm going to be talking about teaching teenagers, obviously. And I'm going to start with a little bit of theory and then just look at a whole load of activities. I do want to check, though, that everybody can use the chat box, okay? Because I think it'd be nice if we can get some participation. The only thing is I am realizing that if I am sharing, yeah, there it is, good-o. I'm on a new laptop and Zoom seems to have moved things slightly. I don't know if it's an update. You can, great, excellent. Because I'm going to start with a very basic question for you. It's nice to see all the nice names. Oh, from a lot of different places as well, by the looks of it. So, and I'm sorry if I'm a bit, but it's a brand new laptop and I'm getting accustomed to the slight differences again. Here's my first question for you, though. Teens, you know what it's like. You walk into the staff room at the beginning of the academic year, or if you're a new teacher, and your head of studies says to you, "I've given you a lot of teen classes this year." Some people go, "Yay!" and some people go. So I'll give you a minute or so. Could you just type in the chat box when you think of teens? What associations do you make, positive and negative? There's lots of positive, but as we know, there's also some negative. Could you just, in the chat box, put your ideas in? Somebody said emotions. I need to put glasses on again. Emotions. I love teens. Yeah, I love teens too. Fun. So we've got emotions. We've got fun. More emotions. Lots of emotions. Challenging. They are challenging. Yes. Unpredictable. Okay, yeah. Polar opposites. Laziness, lots of energy. That feels like me, though, as well. Discovery. Active and volatile. I like that. Lots of boredom and catatonic. How to engage them when they're disengaged. Yes, they're budding adults. I like that. Any more? Any more? Did I miss any in there? Discovery. Rebellious. I missed rebellious. Yes, definitely rebellious. Rebellious against adults, particularly. Not necessarily against other things. I've been teens and as teacher, as a mentor as well. Yes, I think we are kind of mentors, aren't we? And models, in a sense, models of behavior, sometimes of how not to behave. Teachers of the future, chaotic. Oh, I hope the future's not too chaotic. Fun sometimes. No audio. Oh gosh. Esther's got no audio. Friendly, centered. Yep. Optimistic. More fragile than we imagine. They are completely fragile. Yes. Moody people. I like that. Moody. Yes. Mind you, I know I'm moody sometimes as well. A lot of the stuff that teens are, adults are too, but our brains have developed slightly more. And that is an important consideration. It's an important influence factor. That's the word I want. More fragile, moody people, not particularly interested in education or school. Exactly. Well, sometimes they are, but they don't want their friends to know that they are. They need reference points. They get bored easily. I'm going to save this chat. It's really good. Usually overwhelmed with all the activities they do. Yes. And there's a tendency for teachers to think, oh, the current generation, Generation Alpha and Generation Z or Z, oh, they have short attention spans. So I've got to change activity every 10 minutes. But that's not necessarily true. Getting them into flow with longer but engaging activities is also important. Catherine says, tired. Yes, a lot. Tired first thing in the morning, tired at the end of the day, tired after lunch, tired because the bodies are changing and growing, which is a very tiring experience. Metabolism is not fixed yet, etc. They're uncertain about their future. They are, so am I, but that's the other end of the age thing, I think. Anything else? I'm loving this chat, by the way. I'm definitely going to keep it. Thank you very much. I'm going to show you, though, what I think about when I think about teens. I have been teaching for about 37 years. I didn't count. I started counting and it got stressful. It got depressing. I started as a French teacher, very quickly shifted to teaching English, because I was teaching one teenager English, and I absolutely loved it. She was the typical moody, sulky, don't want to be in a class teacher student. And for some reason, my boss asked me to teach her, even though I was a French teacher. And I really enjoyed it. And I had been a very bad, basically, teenage student myself. And so I started to think, why was I so disengaged as a teenager? And I started to basically do the opposite of some of my own teachers. And having done that, I started to research because I thought, well, there has to be a reason why this stuff works. So I started to research and research and research. And then I was kind of lucky because about 10 or 11 years ago, the whole area of neuroscience exploded. So before that, we'd been a lot about motivation, psychology, and so on and so forth. But about 11 years ago, MRI scans started to be used in neuroscience. So it was much easier to start studying things like the adolescent brain. Adult brains had been studied before a little bit, but because it was from cadavers, it wasn't really ethical to study children and adolescents. So anyway, so I thought since about 2013, MRI scans and neuroscience has been better informed. Neuroscience has been better informed by the use of MRI scans. So having researched all that, I'm going to show you the things that I think of when I think of teens now that I am informed. Says she, and the slides don't move. There we go. So when I think of teens now, I think about these things. I think about the importance of reward in class. Reward, yes, sometimes could be a sweet, and yes, sometimes could be a star, but sometimes it's as simple as a little bit of self-esteem, bit of praise, acknowledging when somebody has done something really well. That feeling of reward, apart from the idea of motivation, it does help the brain because the central part of the brain that is developing in adolescence is the social brain, the limbic system in the middle. The limbic system in the middle has is very sensitive to dopamine and to cortisol, but dopamine is the important one here. Dopamine is going kind of out of control almost in the teen years, partly because the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed and it develops later than the social brain. The prefrontal cortex is where our inhibitions and behavior or impulse control systems are. So until really the end of adolescence or towards the end of adolescence, that part of the brain, the control part, I feel like doing this, but I'm not going to because I'm grown up, that part only develops much later on. Now, you know this. You know that a bored teen will put their head on the desk or start playing with something, playing with their shoelaces, get their phones out. A bored adult will find it easier to pretend to be interested. All right. Dopamine functions or responds well to reward. So activities that involve reward will work very effectively and will keep the student engaged for longer, but will also help the brain develop. And as teachers, I know some people say, oh, but I'm just an English teacher. But if you're a teen teacher, as you know, you're educating the whole person. You're helping them to become their future self. So activities that involve reward are ideal. Emotion, and I think that was the first word that came into the chat, which is brilliant. Emotions are beginning to fully develop in adolescence. There are emotions, obviously, in primary school children, but the more complex emotions and the understanding of the emotions or being able to name their emotions is in adolescence. I don't know when your first love was, but I was 14 and I felt everything. And I'm sure you did too, if you go back to that. Emotions trigger the limbic system, which is the social brain. It's the same part. It's the part in the middle of the brain that is in full sort of fizzy development in adolescence. But it's also where the memory center is. The three main parts of the brain involved in forming, storing, and retrieving memory are the caudate nucleus, which is the strange term at the bottom of the slide, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. And those three parts are all really developing in adolescence, and they're also sensitive to emotion. Emotion will trigger them. You know that emotional events, trauma, no, but emotional events are easier to remember. The happy stuff, the sad stuff, the stuff that was disgusting, that kind of thing. Those things are much easier to remember. So we can use that in the classroom by triggering some kind of emotional response, preferably not the negative ones, because just having to speak a foreign language and say, for example, for my students, trying to distinguish between r and o is stressful enough to trigger the negative ones, but the positive ones will help you in the class. Memory and communicative skills, I've just mentioned memory there. Memory is really beginning to develop, to really develop in adolescence. You probably have very few memories from before the age of about 3. You may have a few, but not so many. Then there'll be sketchy until about 11 or 12 and should start getting stronger. You should have a lot of memories from your adolescence. Again, unless trauma is involved, sometimes that can eliminate. Now, I keep saying adolescence. In the brain, adolescence lasts, depending on the person, from about the age of 12 to about the age of 27. So if you're teaching young adults, a lot of this is true for them as well. Male adults, it's about 27. Female adults, it's about 25. Okay. Anyway, so the caudate nucleus, the amygdala, and the hippocampus, they're all involved in memory. They're all in that social part of the brain. They're all triggered by emotion. And the hippocampus is also triggered by maps, by anything that involves mapping or position of places, remembering where things were. Memory games that involve visuals or words on a screen with color involved. Rather than numbering, for example, when you do a matching exercise or something, rather than numbering the items, try putting a colored circle, a different color around each one. That will really help hippocampus because the color will stick better in the memory than the numbers. Sorry, brain. Talking about memory, gosh, mine went blank for a moment. More things that I think of with teenagers, and don't worry, we'll get to the activities in a moment. Obviously, activities that give some degree of empowerment to teenagers. It's not just a sort of vague idea of motivation, of everybody likes to have power. It's also because teens are at the stage where their identity is developing, their sense of who am I? If you give them some power in the class, then you're helping them form that identity. Somebody else in the chat box mentioned rebellious. Yes, because when you're a teenager, it's all about who am I, not who is he or who is she. So that empowerment thing, if you give them empowering activities, you're showing that you trust them, you're giving them responsibility, you're sort of creating a positive connection between them, you're helping them form their own identity, and you're not being that them person that they feel they have to react against. You're giving them something to do and to create by themselves. Problem solving activities are also extremely successful with teenagers because problem solving is shall we say, the responsibility of parts of the brain like the caudate nucleus. The caudate nucleus is the one, there's the part of the brain that takes decisions, says this is right, this is wrong. This is the correct word for this context, for example. Even things like, are we being polite? Are we being informal now? That's sort of caudate nucleus, selecting the correct word. The caudate nucleus, if you speak more than one language to B1 level or higher, and looking at the names, pretty much all of us do, your brain is always thinking in those 2 languages or 3 languages or 4 languages. Your caudate nucleus is the thing that says, I am in this situation, I am talking to this person, I need to use that word in that language. That's also why when you're tired, sometimes, and if you're like me, I speak a couple of languages, but sometimes it'll be, it's only coming to me in Spanish right now. I can't think of the English. What's the English? I know it in Spanish. And that's because my brain is tired. All right. So problem solving will strengthen the brain. It will strengthen that part of the brain. That stronger brain will also help with the language learning, because the stronger, it's like any muscle, the stronger it is, the bigger it is, and this has been proven, the better language skills. All right. So problem solving activities are great. The planning and thinking, the scaffolding type ones will also support the prefrontal cortex. Okay. And then brain training, which is essentially that's what we're doing, supports a process called myelination. I suggest you just screenshot that and look it up later. But basically, that's when people talk about strengthening synapses, that's what it is. Myelination is a bit like putting insulation on copper wire to make the wire stronger and more protected in an electric circuit. It's the same idea, but in your brain, it's like putting a coat on the synapse to make it stronger and to make sure that it lasts and doesn't just break and go away or cause, wires to get crossed. So it is literally like electrics, but that's what myelination is. And brain training, doing activities like, I don't know, Sudokus, for example, in your normal life, in the classroom, any kind of puzzles will cause myelination to happen, and that is positive. All right. Now, contagion is also connected to this. I'm going to come back to this topic later. Contagion, as you know, social contagion is when teenagers, they all follow each other. They want to do the same thing as each other. They all want to be a fan of Harry Styles, or they want Harry Styles' hairstyle, or K-pop, or whatever. This is cool. This is not. If you haven't got Instagram, you're not part of the crowd. That's contagion. It's generally an indicator. It's psychologists use contagion to work out who the popular kids are and to then kind of plant ideas for the spread to be positive rather than negative. And we can do that in our class. I'll give you a couple of examples of an experiment done by a very well-known professor that I've tried myself and also works well. But contagion is something to consider in class. Encouraging positive behaviors for them to then essentially spread it to other kids. That sounds really strange, but I'll give you an example in a bit. All right. So these are the concepts of the terms that I think of, first of all, when I'm planning. So when I was writing the book, and I was writing with my co-author, Teresa Bestwick, we came up with these 8. Well, it's kind of 9 practices, but the 9th one is, fun engagement. Fun, some people, if I say fun, they go, oh, it doesn't have to be fun. No, it doesn't have to be fun, but it does have to be engaging. So that would be the 9th. But the main thing to think about before I start the activities is, now, what do you think the next phrase is? In the chat box, how would you finish that sentence? Considering what I've just told you about brains, activities that work well with teenagers, etc. How can we finish that sentence? This is a typical teacher thing. Can you guess what my phrase says? There is no rules. There's no obligation. I like it. Yes. No obligation sounds like choice. Choice is brilliant in teen classes. No rules. There is no way to force them to do what they don't want to do. No, exactly. There's no responsibility. There's no failure. I love that one. That's Massimo said that. Oh no, sorry, that was Eva Sebastian said it. There's no identical children. Okay, that's extremely relevant. There's no one size fits all. Catherine, you're on the right track. You're going to get my phrase. There's no one perfect task for all students. I love it. There's no time. That's also true. There's no universal formula. Exactly. I'm going to give you a different phrase, but it means the same as a lot of you have said. There's no one way to teach them. Exactly. But so I'm going to just move my chat box. Give me 1 second. I am just not accustomed to this touchpad yet. There we go. There is no silver bullet. Silver bullet, right, Martin. Yeah, exactly. There's no silver bullet. That's the same as you've just said. There's no universal formula. No two kids are identical. So that also means that anybody who says to you, this system always works, what they mean is they can make it work. It's not just the kids that are all different. It's the teachers. We're all different. Something that you can do really, really well. Maybe I can't quite get it to work. And the opposite's true. So that's another reason. That's the reason I decided, well, 8 good practices, because then, you pick a mix. You learn about your students and you take ideas from different ones. Okay. So now I'm just going to give you the 8 practices and then we'll do some activities if you like. This is the list. I need to check my clock. Okay, we're okay for now. Right. Now, when I was planning this, whoops, I've gone ahead, sorry. When I was planning this, I thought, a little ambitious, 8 in the time. So the ones in red are ones I'll give you activities for. The ones in blue, I'll just mention in passing, okay? So it's still 6 things, so it's still going to be quite fast. If I run out of time, when you get the slides, on the first slide, there is my email. Okay, and you can email it to me. This is because I like sessions to be interactive, so I'll be using the chat box a lot. And if it takes longer, it takes longer. Okay, so I will email you like the instructions if we don't get time for all of them. Okay, I hope that's all acceptable for you. We're going to start with this one that I accidentally showed you a moment ago. I'm going to explain the 2 terms. It's probably very clear, but just in case. Safe is very obvious for teen teachers. Safe, basically no teasing, no ridiculing, no subjects that they're going to feel vulnerable about. Early in the academic year, describe your family is not necessarily a good idea. My own sons, I have 2 sons, but I have been a single parent since my youngest son was 15 months. All right. We also lived about 2,000 kilometers from the father's family and about 3,000 kilometers from my family. So that meant that near my children, when they were kids, they didn't have all the cousins and the grandparents and etc. And daddy wasn't home and all that kind of stuff. So, their friends network was much more important. They absolutely hated it when in a class at school, a teacher asked them to describe their family. They hated it. And I had to sit down with my sons and say, it's okay to lie in that kind of situation. All right. So as a teacher, I really avoid all that stuff at the beginning. Or I give kids, I initially say, you can make up the family if you want. I'm more interested in your English. Share what you want. I share stuff with them, just like I have with you, so they feel comfortable sharing. So safe is that, all right? So everything I do in my classes, it's my number 1 principle. I'm kind but firm. Instructions are clear, etc., etc. But it's that safe on a personal level. It's showing respect. So having told you about that word, I'm going to go on with rich. Okay. also pretty much everything I teach now is rich content. Now, it's kind of coming from CLIL, this. I don't used to like CLIL, but I quite like the underlying principles of CLIL. And I find it in my classes now, when I teach content or transferable skills, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, I get a much better response from my students. I used to be a course book writer, so I am definitely guilty of writing grammar exercises that says, John's father plays and they have to put in guitar, and they're sitting there thinking, who is John and why do I care? So now I try to include, put another spin on it, teach them something else. Can be content, information, and it can be skills. The stuff I've got for you today, pretty much all of it I use with my students. Some of it I was teaching yesterday, so it's that fresh. I've chosen the higher level stuff just because of your level, but it is adaptable. I'm going to show you a very, very simple, content-rich, spot the difference picture thing. Now, in class, I do this in pairs or small groups of 3. Unless you can jump on a bus and go to find each other, that's not going to work, and we don't have time for breakout rooms. So I'm going to show you the first picture. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to memorize it as much as possible. No cheating, no screenshotting, please. All right. And then I'll show you the second picture and just type a couple of sentences about description, the differences. What differences do you notice? Are you ready? Just the typical thing. Here's the picture. Here's the first picture. Have a look at that. And I will shut up for 30 seconds and give you brain space to look at it. Remember as much as possible. Sheep, horses, wood wheels. I'm timing you. Okay. I'm going to take that one away. I'm going to show you the second one. And again, this would be pairs or small groups. Can't really do that. So in the chat box, just start telling me the differences that you see. Oops. There we go. There's the second one. What differences can you see? Just chat. Drop them in the chat box. Feudal England, industrialized England. So that's vocabulary. The river has gone. Present perfect. Factory, the church in a Gothic style. That's vocabulary. Great. That's the major difference. Oh, I missed where it is. Going fast now. Smoking chimneys. There's no traffic on the road. So we've got there is, there are. Yes. All right. Keep going. Keep going. We've got a lot of language coming out already. And you'll also notice it's adaptable to different levels. All right, I need to scroll up and read some of your comments. Yeah. 120 years apart. Yes. No factory in the first picture. There's no traffic on the road. There's much fewer arable land. Yes. Or fewer fields or less arable land. The Industrial Revolution has taken place. A green and pleasant land. Yes, dark satanic mills. Exactly. And did those feet. Much less. Sorry, that's okay. No vessel. Hey, we all make mistakes. Teachers make mistakes. I always flag my mistakes to my students and I go, oh, I got that wrong, correct it. Because if I make mistakes, they can make mistakes more comfortably. Most of my students are Japanese and they are fairly mistake averse at the beginning of the year. No horseman there, much less nature. There aren't any sheep. There's a double-decker bus. Yeah, it's trolley bus of some sort. Pollution, same beach cliff in the background. Yeah. Not sure if the other buildings were brick. Almost certainly not. I can go back in a second. Oh, Anna, don't worry. Oh, a blackout in your building. Gosh. Let me see. So brick? No, they weren't brick, were they? They would have been stone or something. There we go. There's a trolley. Yep, there's a trolley bus thing there, isn't there? There's all kinds of stuff. So this picture and this pair of pictures, they work really well because, as you can see from your own language there, you've got present perfect, which is a higher, sort of an A2, B1 kind of level thing. There's what of there is and there are. And vocabulary has no particular level, I don't think. There are sheep, there aren't any sheep. There's a train, there wasn't a train. Whatever, you've got all kinds of language coming out here. But it's teaching them more than just practicing language. It's not just comparing two pictures of an airport. There were he had 3 suitcases, now he has 2 suitcases. Yeah, okay, so what? This, they get interested, they start asking me questions, they show off because some of them know their stuff already. So they start guessing and they start making more sentences. Ah, there were canals. Oh yeah, there were more boats. Ah, there's a train. Is there a train? And they start putting in their own information. Okay, so that's what I mean by content rich, or the safe, rich learning environment. All right. There is a cemetery in the second picture. Yes, there is. And if you are a teenager, you usually notice that the cemetery is bigger than it was. I think there's a small cemetery in the first one and it's bigger in the second. We usually do end up with a conversation about dying with this one, but it comes from them. Just go wherever they take you. But I love this pair of pictures. I haven't done it with this year's group yet. It's a little later in the course, but previous years I've used it. They've loved it. So try something like this. You can find this kind of stuff, by the way. You don't usually get them in English language books, but if you work in a school and you've got a colleague who teaches geography or history or something, borrow their course book and just use their course books. And again, that's empowering because the kids may have studied it already, so they can tell you, right? Try something like that. There's cemetery. Yeah, there's a bigger cemetery. Here's the next thing now. Wait a moment, let me move that over there. Active and interactive learning. I love the fact that active begins with A and interactive begins with I. And for me, it's the only AI that I have in my classes for now. We'll see about the future. Active and interactive is obvious. Students, teenagers who are just sitting listening are probably not sitting listening, they're probably dreaming. Whereas if they're active and interactive, interaction is so important in a class, particularly the teen class, but in all language classes. That's what a language is, it's what it's for. So I'm not going to dwell on that one too much. Students as teachers is a way of making the safe, rich classroom also, hold on, quick read on that one. Teachers are interested in their peers and talking to, exactly, yes. A lot of my job nowadays is monitoring, or maybe starting off a bit like this with the theory and then just going, off you go. All right. Students as teachers, I literally do that. I just give them stuff to find out and then they teach it. They all have this incredible little computer with them. And if you're not allowed phones, there are books and there are class computers, you maybe have an IT room. There are different activities where you can decide on the basic topic. You divide it into 4 sections, for example, create 4 groups and get them to teach. I'm going to give you a little list of ways to do that. Oh, come on, slides. Wait a moment. There we go. I forgot to tell you this one. The reason I get my students to be teachers, apart from empowerment and that showing of trust and giving responsibility, is this, the basic learning pyramid, which you're probably familiar with. I work at one of the colleges at Oxford University. The lecture is one of the key styles of education, of learning, but a minimal amount goes from there. We then have workshops, seminars, whatever, which is in the middle. And then we have tutorials. And I find that if they've got to teach me something, my students learn a lot more. However, I've started to use the student-led in the seminar type subjects as well, and also in my lectures. I am now famous for being the one who doesn't do traditional lectures because my students do the lectures. They do this. We do 10 minutes, 3 truths, 1 lie, which is if I have to teach various things. For example, imagine it was history of art and I had to lecture based on 4 paintings. What I would actually do is allocate 1 painting to each of 4 groups, give them 10 minutes to research and come up with 4 statements, 3 true, 1 lie. It's an old activity, but not just about yourself, about the actual content. I feel that when I was starting to teach, we didn't have the internet. Obviously, I am way too old for that. So we, the teachers, were the keepers of the knowledge. Now we're not really the keepers of the knowledge. We are the mentors, the coaches, the support act, the ones who guide and give instructions, the ones who have ideas, the ones who keep the energy. I think we're like energy managers as well. So this is another reason I do permit them to use their phones. I have eyes everywhere just to check. But anyway, and I also keep a very tight time limit on it, so there's no time to get distracted. They only have 10 minutes. This is what you mean by 10 minutes. Okay, so I give them a task. I'm going to show you 2 in a second. And I say, right, you've got to find out as much as you can. You've got to work in your small group. You've got to come up with these 4 statements. You have 10 minutes, right? If I give them more than that, they'll start checking their Instagram feed. If they've only got 10 minutes to find the facts, work together to come up with the 3 truth sentences and the 1 lie, they stay on task. All right. I mean, I still run around checking that they're on task, but they do stay on task. I always keep time tight with this kind of activity. If they finish in 5 minutes, they don't. Basically, they don't finish in 10 minutes. It takes 12 or 15. I'm going to show you some example tasks. I'll show you this one in a second. When I teach the British film industry, for example, well, I teach film industry, so I make it about the British film industry. And I'm supposed to talk about film studios and history. And so I allocate different aspects to different groups. So they're in 4 groups. 1 group has the British Film Institute, 1 has Ealing Studios, 1 has Pinewood Studios, and I forget the other one, whatever the other one is. And they have those 10 minutes to go away and read. They're not super high level, so they're not going to read that much. So they're reading what they can and checking the time, and then they're going, oh, we got to get our 4 sentences. 10 minutes is probably not enough, but tell them they have 10 minutes. All right. So I wouldn't worry about the time on that one. I'm reading this. Gosh, it's moving so fast. Sorry, Instagram right now. I'll have to read that one in a second. All right. Sorry about that. The way I set it up, by the way, instead of me deciding who gets what to research, because again, that's a sort of a teacher imposition, can put you in the situation of you always give them the easy one. So I do it this way. I color code things. I put them in their 4 groups and I say, choose your color. So, one group, so the names that I can see on the screen. So Massimo's group chooses green, and Anna's group chooses red, and Alexei's group chooses yellow, and etc. Right? And then I reveal it. And they have to research the thing according to the color. All right, it's super simple to do it that way, but it saves any accusations of favoritism. This is something I had to teach last summer, all right, not on the regular course. Sort of how to survive in the UK eating scones and just eating. So a lot of my students in summer were from Taiwan, I don't know, Korea, Japan, so knife and fork etiquette as well. So they're in their groups and they went off and they researched those things and they came back, and I called it TikTok because then they acted it to teach each other. It was quite low level students, so they acted the stuff. I am the scone, boom. Another student, I am the cream, I am the jam, this kind of thing. All right, so that was researching to action. That wasn't the three truths and a lie thing, but I used the same system for allocating. Other times, like yesterday, I wanted my students to research from specific information. I didn't want them to get lost in the internet. I wanted them to look at little videos. And again, I gave them colors. But what I did was this. Oh, come on, my slide's not moving. 1 second. There we go. I created colored QR codes, and I asked them before, which group wants purple, which wants green, which wants red, and which wants blue. So they chose their color first, and then they zapped the correct or the colored QR code. If you want to use something like that, there's a website called QR Monkey, which is the best one or the easiest for making colored QR codes. All right, QR Monkey. And that's what I do a lot. And then that takes them into the video, and then they know, YouTube, they can watch it. If it's too quick, they can slow down the speed of the voice. They can put captions. I'm careful of captions, but the slowing it down if they want to supports the less confident students. They sit in different parts of the room. Would they be classified as TLBT? Don't know. Not sure. Wait a second. I'd have to think about how. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Or project-based learning, perhaps. Yeah. TBL, the version 1 is very specific. Yeah. No, I'm trying to think if they would be or not. No, I know the acronym. Yeah, I guess, in the sense that they do the thing and then you might do the corrections, they do it again, but I wouldn't get them to do it again usually, which TBL you would. You would do it dry and then you'd correct and then they'd do it again. So not really, but it's a bit more project-based. Sorry, I'm so aware of the time and I want to get you doing things again in a second. So that's 10 minutes, 3 truths and 1 lie. Specialists is when they became like the specialists on those 4 QR codes. I don't know if you screenshotted them. They are 1-minute long videos about the history of the English language. There's one about Shakespeare's influence, there's one about the Anglo-Saxons, there's one about the Romans, etc. And they become the specialists. We're the specialists in Roman British or Roman English. We're the specialists in Anglo-Saxon contribution to the language. We're the specialists in the empire, or whatever it is. Tour guides is another one. And I love this because you can do it anywhere. Okay, I live in Oxford. It doesn't matter where you live. You could live in Seoul. You can live in Madrid. You can live in a tiny village in the north of Poland. It really doesn't matter. Your town or your area has things of interest. So the previous class, you have a list of places in the town. You plan a route to walk. This is if you can take your students out, obviously. You plan a route to walk. You have, if you've got, say, 20 students, you have maybe 10 places to stop. You put those places on strips of paper, you stick it in a cup, and you hand out the strips of paper, and they each have somewhere that they have to research, work together with their partner, and find things to say. And they're going to speak for 30 seconds to 1 minute, each person, as you stop. Then you take them out, They're allowed their little notes. They're not allowed Wikipedia, but they can take paper notes, whatever it is. And you do the walk. And then you say, this is stop number 1. Who's got stop number 1? This is stop number 2. Who's got stop number 2? Etc. And they teach. They become like little teachers, tour guides. And it connects them with their own environment. It gives them that power. And again, it's a kind of a transferable skill. I do it around Magdalen College is one college, but I also do walk around Central Oxford. We do Victorian Oxford, and I take them to a place that used to be a brothel and all this sort of thing, and they're like, oh, shocked, but they love it. So, and it's them, it's their power. So that's tour guides. And then TikTok time is the one I just showed you. Frequently, when I get them to do this stuff, I'm in the UK, the weather's terrible here. I can't always do tour guides, but I can get them to imagine they're making a TikTok video. They don't have to film it. They can film it if they want. But doing the acting bit is, it's a bit like TPR, and it's like whole body learning. So it will trigger the memory better. Okay, so that's that one. I feel like time is running away. I also feel like I'm talking too much. Transferable skills. Let's see the time. I will whiz through this. Yeah, we should. I might not have time for the stimulating the senses, but you can contact me about that. Transferable skills is fairly easy. It's what I mentioned before. Content as well as language, so that they appreciate what they're learning. You must have students who just, for them, they feel like learning English is like my original attitude to learning Latin when I was a kid. I was like, I'm never going to need this. What am I doing this for? So if you put in other things, other ingredients, they see the reason. But obviously, it's not all going to be Industrial Revolution. So teenage years, we do CVs, but we also do video CVs, how to make their CV stand out from the crowd, not just how to write a CV. We go into Microsoft, onto Word, where they've got those templates. They fill in the templates. We do a lot of personality adjectives so they can write their own little profile, and then they video it. And they email their videos to me, and I give them feedback. I have a separate email address so that it doesn't completely fill up my Gmail account, but they email me their CVs. And that's like, they do it in class time, but then we can discuss it in the following lesson as well. So they love doing that. Presentations is an obvious one. My students do between probably 4 and 6 presentations each. Mini presentations, maybe 2 minutes rather, maybe 3 minutes. My own students have got their first one next Wednesday. So that's another one. Presenting, we discuss why it's good to be able to give a presentation. I take them outside into the street and show them how to project their voice. Literally in the street, they stand on one side of the road, I stand on the other. They have to communicate. And one of my favorites is poetry. I love the poetry lessons because that's when my sort of shy, more retiring students often really start to blossom. Sometimes it's haiku. Haiku's good for the syllable count stuff. But what I do is I have 3 or 4 poems that I show them how simple real poetry can be. Real sort of professional poetry can be. And then they write their own. I use a poem by Roger McGough called The Leader to show them how repetition and really short sentences can be effective. So that one again, Roger McGough. The poem is called The Leader. You can Google it later. I also show them a poem by Brian Bilston called Phony Excuses. It's only 4 lines, but it's really good at showing how things rhyme because it uses numbers and stuff. So that one shows rhyme. The Leader is long and short sentences and repetition. And this one by Adrian Mitchell, who is one of the punk poets, I absolutely love it. It's 4 lines. I'm going to show you the fourth one in a second, but I show them. It's that the grammar structure is repeated and it all maintains one mood. So you get this: when I am sad and weary, and I tell them what weary means. When I think all hope has gone. When I walk along High Holborn, I think of you and nothing else. So it's the repetition of the structure and then change of structure for change of mood. You get that with the leader as well. And you also get it with Funeral Blues. If you look at the first 2 stanzas of Funeral Blues, I show them that as well. We just look at it. We literally look at it for about 10 minutes. And then I give them 15 minutes to write a poem. No, my students do not hate me. They like me. And they know that they're going to have to work. They've got to really try to do it. The other thing with 15 minutes for a poem is they don't get hung up on, oh, I can't think of an idea. Just ask them to write about how they're feeling today, something they did this week, how they feel when they're at home in the evening, how they feel when they're talking to their friends. I'm going to show you a poem by one of my students. This was about a month into the course. She was the shyest. I didn't think she could speak English at all. I knew she understood something because she nodded and smiled, but that was about it. She was really, and I was desperately trying to find some way of supporting her. We did this lesson, and it's still one of my favorite poems. I'll show you. Here you go. I don't know if you can read that. Oh, this is by Haruka. When I'm in my room, when I'm in my accommodation room, when there's no one left, I eat crisps without thinking. I love it because I know that feeling. I have been there. That is me. I love it. And I've got a whole collection now. And then I just take their poems and I put them together into a little booklet and then give it to them with a photo of the class on the front. And they absolutely love it. So try it. Try those poems. The Leader by Roger McGough, Phony Excuses by Brian Bilston, the first 2 stanzas of Funeral Blues, and this one, Celia, Celia by Adrian Mitchell. Okay, that's poetry. Learning Tree, how many minutes have I got? The Learning Tree, I've started setting this one up this week. Learning Tree is my name for it. There's a lot more information about it in the book. But for me, learning, or the way that I should plan my classes to really support my students rather, is like a tree. The roots, you need the roots or it's all going to fall down, right? The roots are the stuff they already know. You've got to activate it. So that's all the brainstorming, the opportunity to show you what they already know. Rather than going into a class and just saying, okay, today we're doing this stuff. But they already know. If they already know it, they're not going to listen to you. And also, you're not giving them space. So it's empowering. So this week I started with this lesson that I'm doing. Parts of the body, they drew a big stick person on a bit of flip chart paper, 2 teams, and they had to label 30 parts of the body. And of course they went, 30, that's too many. And you go, no, it's not. They actually got nearer 50 because they were competing. So they started labeling, they were cheating. I don't care. They're looking up how to say ankle and how to say Achilles tendon in one group, But it doesn't matter. So then we have these big posters and they're on the board. Later class in the course, which I haven't done yet, all right? But we did that, and then we did the At the Doctor's role play. That was earlier this week. Later in the course, I will reactivate that knowledge. I'll come back to it. I'll get them to draw another picture or label something else or point to each other or whatever. So that will be the roots. The trunk of the tree is the target language of the lesson. It's the my stuff. It's my objective. When I get to this lesson with the parts of the body, my objective will be to give instructions, to review giving instructions, and then saying a bit more, a bit less, and verbs of things like bend, stretch, I don't know, rise, drop, these sort of things. The leaves and the branches are the emergent language. You should, I think, genuinely think, allow space for the students to put in other stuff, you know, like Achilles tendon, my students this week. Well, yeah, okay, put it in. So stuff they already know, your target language, and the stuff that they want. So basically it's they have, they need, they want. That's the three levels: the roots, the trunk, and the branches and the leaves. Always bearing in mind that trees lose leaves. So, you know, but you can make them come back. So for me, that's the learning tree. And a sequence of activities will build on that. So you start at the bottom and you grow up. An example of that is in my later course, or later on in the course rather, I will review the parts of the body, that'll be the roots. I will teach them those verbs like stretch, etc. And then I will put them into small groups. They will go to YouTube. They will find a viral dance and they will prepare to teach the class the dance without showing the class the video. I do this every year. The year that I do, the day rather that I do it, I have to take sports shoes and joggers and stuff to class. I have learned the craziest dances in the last few years, but each group will teach for about 3 minutes. They give instructions and everybody does the dance to the music. We don't see the video, we do to the music. This is also transferable skills because at the end of the lesson, we discuss which instructions were the easiest to follow and why. Which dance was the easiest, how clear, and it's all about giving clear instructions, which is good for their future life and sort of management, communication, all that stuff. But it's really empowering. It's called Dance Party, that particular activity. There are more learning tree stuff in the book. I'm going to give you a QR code to the most dance that I've had to learn in the last few years. If you want to practice this, try it with this dance and think about the language that they would need to explain it to you. So if you screenshot that, you'll get it. It is now 3:30. I should really stop, but I am going to just show you what's left, essentially. Authenticity is just, you know what that is. The tasks should connect to their real lives, but also be authentic as a teacher. Be yourself. Share. If you're going to ask them to share, share. I've got a really sore foot today, so I've said to them today, I might be in a bad mood because I've got a sore foot. You know, be your real self. Collaboration, cooperation. They need to learn to function in the adult world. So they need to work together. But that's also a way of you being able to step back a little bit. Contagion, there's this amazing project that Professor Sarah Jane Blakemore carried out. She is a psychologist, basically, a neuroscientist. She studies the adolescent brain. She is amazing. Check out all her books. She did a project to see how bullying could be reduced in some schools. So they went into various schools and they set up a program whereby they got students, they gave students these orange wristbands. And they said to the students that whenever they saw another student in their school doing something that was kind, or something to kind of eliminate or intervene in cases of bullying, so something anti-bullying essentially, they were to give the student this orange wristband. So gradually, the students all started wearing these orange wristbands because everybody wanted these orange wristbands. They became like the fashion thing because popular kids were giving out these orange wristbands. And so Sarah Jane Blakemore and her colleagues were sort of saying, you know, the implications in education of that kind of project or campaign or whatever for making social contagion a positive force. Now, when I was researching, and it was researching for the Delta book, I did my own project in class. Sleep is an issue for teenagers, and my students last year particularly were dreadful at getting enough sleep. So we set up one class set up this thing where they designed a logo, they thought of awards, they created a poster. We looked online at the NHS posters for different campaigns. So they looked at how to structure a good poster. You have a heading, you have a little text, you have a big picture, etc., etc. So they made their posters. They made little mascotty things. They had a whole reward system. And then we went to, they researched what are the benefits of sleep, etc., why it's important. And then we went into other classes. They visited other classes and they presented to the other kids. All right, I'm going to show you their poster. This is one group's poster. I haven't got all of them on here. You don't want to see all of them, but this was my favorite. This poster, the other kids in other classes asked for copies to put up in their classroom. So this is Momoko and Senna last year, Sleep Well, Youth Well. And because of the S and the Y of Sleep Well and Youth Well, they had this little mascotty thing they called Psy. And they did the posters and it was super effective. And my students started sleeping properly. Okay, so that is all I have time for. I've already stolen way too much of your time. There's only stimulating the senses left to explain. So just drop me a line and I will explain that. It's all about visualization, using music for visualization. It's also in the book, of course, right? So, and that was not deliberate. But there you go. There's my email. There's my Instagram thing. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Quantum ELT is coming soon. I haven't had time to get onto it yet. And then we have this chat thing on Tuesdays. It's been sleeping dormant over summer and the beginning of the academic year, but it'll be starting again in 2 weeks' time, 10 days' time, I guess. So there we go. Just one more slide left, and it says, thank you. See you in Edinburgh, if you're going to Edinburgh, by the way. That's the IATEFL next year is in Edinburgh. And I'm going to have a quick look at the chat. I don't know if Josefa's there at all, but I've definitely overshot my time. Listen for hours. Yeah, I could talk for hours. I'm sorry, Francesca. I'm so passionate about this. Seriously. I mean, when people talk to me about grotty teens, I couldn't hit them, but you know what I mean? I think they're not grotty teens, it's grotty teachers. So, come on, they're not grotty, they're lovely. They're difficult at the beginning, that's all. They don't, why are they going to trust you? You're an adult, you've got to go in and work and get them on side, but you've got to respect them and you've got to, if you know how their brain's working, what they're going through, they're probably exhausted just from growing, coping with emotions and trying to be cool or at least not be uncool, so yeah. And do please email me. Muchas gracias. Pues de nada, Eva. Or the rest, depending. Do you speak Mallorquín or do you speak Spanish? So anyway, I don't know where Josefa's gone. She might have. Is she here? I've lost her. There we go. Certificates are further up the chat box, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, if you scroll up a bit. Oh, send us a list of the poems. I don't know if you're Michelle or Michele, but I will put them in the chat box. 1 second, I will type them in. The poems were The Leader by Roger McGough. Roger McGough used to be in a band called Scaffold with Paul McCartney's brother. So that tells you kind of the age. He's still alive, but he's very senior. Phony Excuses is spelt the way it is in the chat box because it's playing with the idea of a phone. Phony Excuses is by Brian Bilston. What was the other one I said? Celia is by Adrian Mitchell. So basically you've got a Liverpool poet, a punk poet, the Twitter poet, because Brian Bilston's now, and then W.H. Auden's Funeral Blues. Funeral Blues, the first two stanzas have very, very long sentences, which is brilliant as a contrast to the Roger McGough. And also the Roger McGough is all like, exactly. It reminds me of Boris Johnson. It's all, I want to be the leader. I want to be the leader. Can I? Can I? Whereas the Funeral Blues with its long sentences is that solemn. It also repeats grammar. The first two stanzas of Funeral Blues, it's all imperative, all of it. And then that's easy to compare with the Adrian Mitchell. There's the 4 poems in the chat box. So there we go. I'm going to say bye-bye and thank you. I seem to have lost Josefa from Delta, unless she's got an internet problem. The 8 bullet points once more. Yes, of course. Hold on 1 second. I'll go back to the one that I haven't taken all the colour out of. Yep. There it is. There's the full. That's the 8 good practices. Ah, she left to the train station. Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Jessica. Yeah, that's the 8. So you've got Safe Rich, you've got the active, interactive, which is like AI, students as teachers or student-led classroom. Transferable skills, learning tree, authenticity of task and of teacher. Collaboration or collaboration, cooperation. And stimulating the senses.